When you hear the word Viking, what exactly comes to mind? Bloodthirsty savages? Unwashed barbarians in horned helmets, tearing through Europe and leaving nothing but ash in their wake? For centuries, pop culture has painted a very specific and very dirty picture of the Norsemen. We imagine them as beasts who cared for nothing but war and mead. But what if I told you that almost everything you thought you knew is a lie? Welcome to the real Viking Age. And the first myth we need to slaughter today is the idea that they were filthy. In reality, the Vikings were arguably the cleanest people in all of Europe, while the rest of the continent was living through a period where bathing was considered dangerous to one's health. The Norsemen were practically obsessed with personal hygiene. Don't believe me? Let's look at the dirt, or rather the lack of it. When archaeologists excavate Viking graves, they don't just find swords, axes, and shields. The most common artifacts found, buried with Viking warriors, both men and women, are grooming kits. Finely crafted combs made from bone and antler, tweezers, razors, and even specially designed ear cleaners. These weren't luxury items for the elite. They were everyday essentials. A true Viking wouldn't be caught dead without his comb. Their dedication to cleanliness was literally baked into their language. In modern Scandinavian languages, the word for Saturday, lørdag or lørdag, originates from the Old Norse word laugardagar. Do you know what that translates to? Wash-in day. Every single week. It was a cultural mandate to take a full, hot bath, wash their faces, comb their hair, and change their clothes. To put that in perspective, many European royals at the time bathed maybe once or twice a year. This extreme hygiene wasn't just about feeling fresh. It was a psychological and social weapon. We actually have written records from an outraged English cleric named John of Wallingford. He bitterly complained that the Vikings were seducing the noble women of England. His reasoning? The Vikings had the audacity to comb their hair every day, bathe every Saturday, and frequently change their clothes. That's right. The Vikings didn't just conquer with axes. They conquered with basic hygiene and good grooming. They also loved vibrant colors, dyeing their clothes in bright reds, blues, and yellows, and wearing elaborate jewelry. To be a Viking was to be vain. Presentation was everything. A warrior's appearance was tied directly to his honor and status. So the next time you picture a Viking, lose the mud, drop the horned helmet, and give him a comb. But their obsession with perfection didn't stop at their own bodies. It extended to the very machines that made them the masters of the known world. If a Viking's grooming routine was a statement of pride, their ships were their absolute masterpieces. Forget the heavy, clunky galleons of later European empires. The Viking longship, the Drakkar, was the apex of medieval engineering. It was the stealth bomber of the 9th century. Fast, terrifying, and technologically centuries ahead of its time. But what made these wooden dragons so unstoppable? It started with how they built them. While other nations sawed their wood, weakening the grain, the Vikings split oak logs with axes, preserving the natural strength and flexibility of the timber. Then, they used a revolutionary technique called clinker building. Instead of placing planks edge to edge, they overlapped them and riveted them, together with iron. This meant the hull of a Viking ship wasn't rigid. It was alive. It would physically bend, twist, and flex to absorb the brutal impact of the North Atlantic waves. While rigid European ships would shatter in a storm, the Viking ships danced over the water. But their true, terrifying advantage was their draft, the distance between the waterline and the bottom of the ship. A fully loaded Viking longship, carrying dozens of heavily armed warriors, could float in less than 3 feet of water. Imagine the sheer terror this caused. They didn't just rule the open ocean. They could sail straight off the sea, ride up shallow rivers, and strike deep inland cities like Paris before anyone even knew they were there. And because the ships were perfectly symmetrical, they never had to waste time turning around to retreat. They just reversed the oars and vanished like ghosts. But the greatest ship in the world is useless if you don't know where you're going. How did the Vikings navigate across the featureless ocean to discover Iceland, Greenland, and North America centuries before Columbus without a magnetic compass? To their enemies, it looked like witchcraft. To the Vikings, it was applied science. On heavily overcast days, when the sun and stars were completely hidden, they used something called a sunstone, likely a polarizing crystal known as Iceland spar. By holding this stone up to a cloudy sky, it would capture and polarize the hidden sunlight, pinpointing the exact location of the sun behind the clouds. Combine this with their encyclopedic knowledge of whale migrations, the flight patterns of seabirds, and the subtle changes in ocean currents, and you have a culture that didn't just survive the seas. They read them like a book. They had the ships to take them anywhere on Earth. But what happened when those ships hit the shore? The chaos they unleashed was far more calculated than history wants you to believe. If you watch any Hollywood movie, a Viking battle looks like a chaotic bar brawl with axes, screaming madmen swinging wildly, breaking ranks, and relying purely on brute strength. It makes for great television, but terrible history. The truth is far more chilling. The Vikings didn't conquer half of Europe by being disorganized savages. They were disciplined, calculating, and masters of psychological warfare. At the core of their military genius was the Skjaldborg, or the shield wall. This wasn't just a crowd of men standing close together. It was a highly choreographed living fortress. Warriors interlocked their massive round shields, overlapping them by up to half their width, creating an impenetrable wall of oak, leather, and iron. It required absolute trust and synchronization. If one man stepped out of line, the whole wall would collapse. This level of tactical discipline is the exact opposite of a mindless barbarian. But their greatest weapon wasn't the axe, it was terror. The Vikings understood that the best way to win a battle was to make the enemy surrender before a single drop of blood was spilled. They were pioneers of psychological warfare. They purposefully painted their sails in aggressive colors like blood red and raven black. They timed their raids for the dead of night or the thickest morning fog, striking when their targets were most vulnerable and disoriented. And then there were the berserkers. You've heard the term going berserk. It comes from these elite Viking shock troops, who fought in a trance-like fury, supposedly immune to pain and fire. Legend says they were possessed by the spirit of Odin, biting their shields and howling like wolves. For centuries, historians thought this was pure myth or sheer adrenaline, but modern science offers a different, fascinating explanation. Archaeologists have discovered seeds of Hyoscyamus niger, known as henbane, in Viking graves. This highly toxic psychoactive plant can induce extreme hallucinations, rage, and a complete loss of pain sensation. It wasn't magic that made the berserkers invincible. It was early chemical warfare. They were essentially micro-dosing hallucinogens to turn themselves into the ultimate weapons of shock and awe. They were undisputed masters of war and strategy abroad. But the most shocking revelation about the Vikings wasn't how they treated their enemies. It was how they treated their own people back home, and specifically, the power they handed to their women. If you look at the rest of medieval Europe during the 9th century, the role of women was grim. They were largely treated as property, devoid of political power, and entirely subservient to men. But in the frozen north, the rules were radically different. Viking women didn't just survive in a harsh, warrior-driven society. They commanded it. And their ultimate symbol of power wasn't a sword. It was a key. When the men set sail for months on end to raid or trade, the entire Viking economy and society fell into the hands of the women. They were the undisputed bosses of the estates. They managed the massive farms, handled the finances, oversaw the slaves, and negotiated trade. To symbolize this absolute authority, the lady of the house proudly wore the keys to the property's locked chests and storehouses on her belt. She was, quite literally, the keeper of the kingdom. But their power went far beyond household management. Viking women possessed legal rights that were practically unheard of anywhere else in the world at the time. They could own land, inherit wealth, and run their own businesses. Even more shockingly, they had the absolute right to demand a divorce. If a husband was abusive, a bad provider, or even if he just wore shirts cut so low that they exposed his chest, which was considered a feminine trait, Woman could call witnesses, declare herself divorced, and legally take back her entire dowry. Their society was heavily regulated by strict codes, like the later Gragas laws, which violently punished the mistreatment of women. Unwanted advances, harassment, or violence were met with crippling fines or outlawry, meaning the offending man was stripped of all rights and could be legally killed by anyone without consequence. The Vikings protected their women with the edge of an axe, and if you think their power was confined strictly to the law and the home, think again. For over a century, archaeologists studied a spectacular, weapon-filled grave in Birka, Sweden, assuming it belonged to an elite, high-ranking male warlord. It had swords, armor-piercing arrows, and sacrificed horses. But in 2017, modern DNA testing dropped a historical bombshell. That legendary battle-hardened warlord was a woman. The Skjaldmo, the legendary shieldmaidens, weren't just folklore. They were real, and they bled on the battlefield right alongside the men. They were brilliant engineers, fierce protectors, and terrifying warriors. But their ultimate legacy isn't written in the blood of their enemies. It's buried in the dirt of continents they supposedly never reached. We opened this journey by stripping away the mud and the myth. We've seen their brilliant engineering, their psychological warfare, and the surprising power of their women. But the final, and perhaps most shocking truth about the Vikings, is that their ultimate weapon wasn't the axe. It was the scale. They weren't just the raiders of Europe. They were the ultimate businessmen of the medieval world. While the rest of Europe was isolated in the Dark Ages, the Vikings were building a massive global web of trade. Their network stretched from the freezing coasts of North America to the scorching deserts of the Middle East. We often talk about the Silk Road, but there was a Viking Silk Road that connected the unknown, north to the Islamic Golden Age. They traded walrus ivory, furs and amber for silver, spices and silk. The proof is literally buried in the dirt. In a 9th century grave in Birka, Sweden, archaeologists found something that completely shattered our understanding of Viking borders, a silver ring with a pink glass stone. But the inscription on the ring wasn't written in Norse runes. It was inscribed in ancient Arabic, and it read, "For Allah." It is physical, undeniable proof of direct contact between the frozen north and the Islamic world. Their reputation as fearless, disciplined warriors eventually caught the attention of the most powerful empire on earth. By the 10th century, the Byzantine emperors in Constantinople decided that local guards couldn't be trusted, so they hired the Vikings. Thousands of Norsemen traveled to modern-day Turkey to serve as the emperor's elite, personal bodyguards known as the Varangian Guard. They were the most feared and highly paid mercenaries of the medieval age, fighting with giant two-handed axes to protect the Roman throne. The Vikings didn't just burn the world, they connected it. They founded major cities like Dublin in Ireland and Kiev in Ukraine. They pushed the boundaries of exploration centuries before the Renaissance. And when the Viking Age finally ended in the 11th century, they didn't really disappear. They settled down, married into local populations, and became the Normans, the Russians and the British. Their blood still flows in millions of people today. So the next time you hear the word Viking, I don't picture a filthy barbarian with a horned helmet. Picture an explorer, a master engineer, a shrewd merchant, a society of powerful women and disciplined warriors who sailed out of the ice and changed the DNA of the modern world forever.